Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is leadership in Israel, the leadership of the state of Israel. Have you ever wondered why so many generals vie for political leadership in Israel? One former general, present contender, is the most decorated of all Israel's generals. Another was the head of the Mossad, still another the internal security, and of course the general who is IDF chief of staff. One party has at least 3 generals on their list. There are so many berets thrown into the political ring right now, it's hard to keep track. Ostensibly, the argument is twofold. First, these former generals want to protect Israel, the country they love and to which they have dedicated their careers and quite literally their lives. And second, they disagree with Prime Minister Netanyahu's point of view on safety and security. But that's not really true. It's more spin than honest assessment. The truth is that these generals want to trade in their name recognition for political power, and this is a crucial point for ultimate control. The Israeli army is the most revered institution in Israel, and IDF leaders have, over and over again, proven themselves capable of defending the state and defending her against all odds. They have protected the young men and women that are in their charge. They have instilled great character and initiative in young adults and transformed them into great contributors for their country. They have earned the rank and are deserving of the respect accorded to IDF generals by the citizens of Israel and by the world. And still, perhaps because of this, they want more. In Israel, the army is the perfect springboard into politics. Today's array of political hopefuls are following in the footsteps of their illustrious predecessors. 3 of the 12 prime ministers in Israel's young history have been generals: Yitzhak Rabin, Ariel Sharon, and Ehud Barak, who's running again. Dozens of politicians and government ministers over the years traded on their notoriety as war heroes. No one can forget Moshe Dayan or Ezer Weitzman. The generals vying for leadership against Netanyahu in September all claim to know him. They claim to know his weaknesses, and part of their campaigns promise that they will be able to take him down, as if Netanyahu has an Achilles heel. No such weapon was used in the April election. This type of campaigning is a new weapon in their arsenal against the sitting prime minister. It's all about tactics, and if there's one thing former generals know about, it's tactics. Campaigning against Netanyahu is not easy for any contender, certainly not for these generals. In that respect, the generals, each and every one of them, are interchangeable. While they may disagree with the prime minister about the 2-state solution or about how harsh to be with Iran, on most of these topics, they're on the same page. The differences are subtle and nuanced, not critical or even strikingly obvious. At one point or another, they all worked for Bibi, and now they want to oust him. They think that their IDF experience will win over the Israeli masses by luring the voting populace away from a leader they perceive to be a demagogue and a danger to Israel. At least, that is the campaign picture they are painting. Netanyahu does have a weakness. He is his own worst enemy. The prime minister did not anticipate the extent of the legal proceedings against him. All of the charges in these cases will not simply go away. Call it ego, call it hubris. It is a trait he shares with those who wish to rule and lead, and certainly with the generals competing for political prominence and his position. But it seems that the voters were not and are not affected by the charges, nor by the possibility that the prime minister, the longest-seated prime minister in the history of the country, might be guilty. And if that sentiment holds strong until September, the generals and all the others who want to take Netanyahu down have no secret weapon. They can hope that Bibi will implode. They can wish for him to say something or do something else that will toss the election. But right now, that's highly unlikely. If his popularity did not fail during the course of the April election, when he was actually indicted, why think that it will happen during the September election, with no new charges pending? It would be unlikely that he can be hurt worse than he was before. Remember that it was not the voters who prevented Netanyahu from carrying on as prime minister. It was the coalition partners or lack thereof. And yet each of these generals wants to be the person to replace him. Unlike the run-of-the-mill politicians, who are in the game of politics for the long term. Most of the generals are in it for the quick hit. They're fighting a battle, not strategizing for a war. At this stage in the game, I would recommend that the generals and everyone else, the Liebermans, the Bennetts, the Gantzes, focus on fighting and figuring out how to align with Netanyahu or how to oppose him. Don't plan on deposing Netanyahu just yet. Work in tandem or work in opposition. Don't try to oust. Netanyahu has thought this through. He has calculated that the second election, Israeli voters would lose interest in blue and white, his biggest competition in April. He is convinced that there will be a rubber band effect, and blue and white will drop in popularity because they have not shown the people why a vote for them meant anything. He anticipates that voters will return home to Likud. He might never have reached the level of IDF general, but Bibi Netanyahu knows how to command and how to lead. Come September, the general hopefuls will learn a lesson in politics from a master. Watch and learn. The next thing I've been thinking about is drones, aka also known as UAVs, or unmanned aerial vehicles. When Israel examined the Syrian Hezbollah drone that they shot down, they were surprised for a big reason. The Israeli military discovered that the drone, the enemy drone, was using Israeli technology. Then again, when you deal with untrustworthy parties like Russia, one should expect contract violations, like handing over your secret technology to your enemy. In this particular case, it seems clear that Israel gave their technology and technological secrets to the Russians, and the Russians gave Israel's top secret drone technology and material to the Syrians and Hezbollah. And now it is being used against Israel. It happens more often than we know, and it's happening right now. For example, the conflict between the United States and Turkey. Illicit transfer of information is the most critical reason explaining the current tension between these two countries. The United States is upset with Turkey because the Erdogan government is actually engaged in weapons deals with Russia. Specifically, Turkey has received surface-to-air S-400 missiles. The common thread in these two situations is Israel and Hezbollah and the United States and Turkey, of course Russia. The Russians are masterful at manipulating, intimidating, and influencing others in order to gain an advantage in the arms game. The Syrian Hezbollah drone was shot down in August of last year. The story broke in the Intercept website just recently, one of the most important military sites on the internet. Here's the backstory. In 2010, Russia was in a cross-border conflict with one of its former states, Georgia. Israel had sold Georgia drone technology, and Georgia was using their drones to monitor Russian movements. Russia shot down one of the drones and discovered that it was Israeli-made, and they were, diplomatically speaking, livid and made all kinds of threatening noises. All was resolved when Israel agreed to sell Russia those same drones for $400 million. In exchange, Russia agreed to suspend their sale of the S-300 to Syria and Iran. The S-300 is an older version of the S-400. The original name of this sought-after Israeli drone technology was IAI Searcher. IAI stands for the Israel Aircraft Industries. The Searcher was developed in two versions. Version 1, it was named Meromit, which translates as a marsh tern, which is a swallow-like bird. The second version was called Hugla, or Electorus, which is like a quail. It is not a small drone at all. Its dimensions are 28 feet wingspan and 19 feet in length. It stands 4 feet high. After receiving the drone, the Russians renamed it Forepost, which means in Russian, Searcher. These drones are very different from the US Reaper and Predator drones. The US drones are attack drones. These drones simply gather material and intel. They can stay in position for hours in the same place, monitoring, watching their target. In 2015, Israel signed a deal to sell the drones to the Ukraine, and then the Russians stepped in. Russia was locked in conflict with the Ukraine. Russia leaned on Israel, and Israel pulled out of the deal. In exchange, Russia bought more drones from Israel. Now the issue gets touchy. What do you do when your technology ends up in your enemy's hands and you have unequivocal proof because you were the one who shot it down? Russia claims that they did not give the technology to Syria or to Hezbollah. Rather, they explain, they gave over information reaped from the drones. When delivering info to and intel, Russia has the ability to edit and select what and which intel is worthwhile conveying. Israel isn't buying the Russian excuse at all. They believe that Russia is lying, and they have the proof to support their claim. Now Israel and Russia are dancing a very delicate ballet dedicated to avoiding a direct conflict. A special line of communication has been established to draw down tensions and make certain that they do not go head-to-head. Russia cannot afford a direct dogfight with Israel. Russia's reputation in the region is that of military force policing, harnessing, and keeping everyone in check. Given the drone complication, that reputation is at stake. If Russia were to lose a dogfight directly with Israel, it would elevate Israel's reputation in the region exponentially and destroy Russia's standing as the preeminent force in the world. The drone was shot down, parenthetically, by a Patriot missile, the defense missile supplied to Israel by the United States. It was the second time a drone like that was spotted. Israel allowed the first drone to safely return to its home base so that they could watch where it went and figure out to whom it belonged. This incident will not stop Israel from selling weapons and information. Israel's creative technologies are for sale, and this sector is a very important part of Israel's defense and economy. The problem is that some of the biggest buyers in the world are not, to put it politely, trustworthy. Israel must be aggressive with Russia, but they must be aggressive diplomatically and behind closed doors. Like most countries, Israel needs Russia. But this time, Russia got caught. They overstepped and perpetrated a major violation that clearly endangers Israel's safety. Russia is a very dangerous and very powerful force. Coming up next, points of view. Here's what some important voices have been talking about. First up is a column from Ynet. Ynet is the website of Israel's daily Yediot Achronot. This column is entitled Iran's Waiting Game in the Gulf. It was published on July 22, 2019, and was written by Ron Ben Ishai. Ron Ben Ishai is a respected military columnist. He is extremely insightful, and this column is no exception. The premise of the piece is that Iran has failed in many ways to achieve their goals, but can still cause significant damage, and it still remains a serious threat. This is how Ron Ben Ishai begins. The conflict in the Strait of Hormuz is as much a battle of minds as it is a physical battle between Iran on the one hand and the United States, Europe, and the oil-rich Arab nations on the other. For now, the conflict is contained by all sides, but the risk that it may spiral out of control and become a military conflict, if not all-out war, so far, all sides, Iran especially, have been acting responsibly and are careful not to allow a deterioration, but there are two worrying points that should be considered. The first is Iran's increasing political sophistication in the way it conducts a synchronized campaign using all branches of its military. The second is Iran's ability to lie, allowing countries who may benefit from the situation in the Gulf to make use of these lies to mask their decisions and policies. Those countries include Russia, China, India, and Turkey. Ben Ishai takes a look at Iran's objectives and then continues in the following way. The aims are a renewal of negotiation on the nuclear deal, a rise in oil prices to increase revenue, and glorification of the country's leadership. Iran hopes to arrive at any negotiations with the United States from a position of strength, having shown that it is able to threaten the Gulf states and much of the world's oil flow while not having to shut down either its nuclear or ballistic missile programs. Iran is attempting to cause a hike in oil prices and in the cost of insuring the tankers that transport it. Ben Ishai now explains that Iran is not achieving its goals and that the United States is actually in the power seat. He writes, Iran has been revealed to be increasingly desperate, and barring a wrong move that could indeed result in war, it is a matter of time before they sit down to negotiate on the West's terms. The only explicit and immediate threat would be if American lives are lost as a result of Iranian actions in the Gulf. That promises Trump would result in a swift military action. Iran has taken note. Now comes Ben Ishai's conclusion. He writes, since war is inadvisable and unlikely, Iran's position, unless and until it brings about a change in U.S. sanctions, is to wait it out with the hope that the 2020 elections will seat a new American president. Ben Ishai knows Israeli politics well. It waits to be seen how well he understands U.S. politics. Second up is an editorial from the Jerusalem Post. Remember, the editorial runs without a name, and it is the point of view of the editorial board. This editorial is about democracy and elections in Israel. The editorial board is addressing the issue of too many parties running in elections. The piece was published on July 21st, 2019. This is how it begins. There is very little consolation in having a second round of elections so close to the first, but one advantage is that it gives the politicians a chance to fix major problems from the earlier experience. One of the most obvious problems with the election for the 21st Knesset was the number of smaller parties that ran. The last election was characterized by several major splits ahead of the April 9th date. And the more is not necessarily the merrier, particularly in Israel's political situation. A huge number of lists, more than 35 ran in April, does not bring about stability. Each similar party draws away potential voters of a larger list. This means that whoever is chosen to create a new government is more reliant on smaller parties that end up with a disproportionate power, enabling them to determine who will be prime minister through coalition deal-making. This opens the door to political blackmail, not to democratic plurality. The editorial continues. When former Prime Minister Ehud Barak, for example, announced his political comeback with his newly and hastily created Democratic Israel Party, was it because he could not find a place in an existing party? Or did he feel that only he could offer the solutions the country needs? Indeed, it's hard to discern what his platform is, other than that Bibi must go. On the right wing of the map, the situation is no better. The infighting within existing lists such as Zehut and the National Union and Otzma Yehudit is debilitating to those parties and is one of the biggest problems preventing lists from merging. Now the editors conclude, some of the parties that did manage to put egos aside and run together last time, including the Arab parties and the parties on the far right, have so far been unable to do the same again. Much can change in the 2 weeks left before the parties have to submit their final lists to the Central Elections Committee. We hope the parties across the spectrum use their time wisely. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. We're going to look at 3 cartoons today, 1 from Germany and 2 from France. The first cartoon was published on July 21st, 2019, and is called No F-35 Fighters for Turkey. It is drawn by Rainer Hatchfeld of Germany. Trump is telling Erdogan of Turkey, no, you are not going to get our brand new stealth F-35 fighter jets. Someone is standing behind Erdogan, tapping him on the shoulder. It's Vladimir Putin. And Putin is saying, psst, to Erdogan. Behind his back, Putin is holding a picture of the Su-35, Russia's super fighter jet. The point is clear. Russia will sell to Turkey what the United States will not. Second up is a cartoon from France. It was published on July 15, 2019. It is entitled Boom, You Soon, and is drawn by Robert Rousseau. The leader of Iran is holding a bouquet of flowers in his hand. On closer inspection, they're not flowers at all. They're actually nuclear signs attached to stems. The Iranian's headdress is a mushroom cloud and a series of rings, all from a nuclear explosion. The background is tellingly orange. Third up and last is a cartoon also from France. It was published on July 22nd. This cartoon is called Trump and Iran. It was drawn by Pierre Boully. Trump and the Grand Ayatollah are stepping on each other's toes, so to speak. Trump is wearing his typical red tie, and the Ayatollah's long beard is flowing. The Ayatollah is stepping on Trump's tie. Trump is stepping on the Ayatollah's long white beard. It's so simple, so funny, and so true. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. The Foreign Ministry of Israel hosted a group of bloggers from Arab and Muslim countries. 6 bloggers came to the trip. One of them was Muhammad Saud from Saudi Arabia. Saud is a very popular blogger. Saud is also fluent in Hebrew. Like any good Muslim, Saud wanted to visit the Dome of the Rock, Haram al-Sharif, the noble sanctuary as it's called in Arabic. He dressed in traditional Saudi religious garb and ascended the mount. Locals were not pleased. Some people threw chairs at him. Video shows Saud standing at the Dome of the Rock when a youngster ran up to him, grabbed his arm, and spit in his face. This was not part of the Foreign Ministry's objective in bringing the bloggers to Israel. The guests of the Foreign Ministry met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. During their meeting, the Prime Minister told the bloggers that actually Israel is keeping the region safer. Netanyahu said, and I'm quoting here, but within the region, Israel is an irreplaceable power because there is no other power in the region that without its presence and activity here, I would say the region would collapse. Without Israel, without the things we do, the things we stand for, and the things we protect, I think the entire Middle East would collapse by forces of Islamic radicalism, whether Shiites led by Iran or Sunni radicalism led by the Islamic State. The Prime Minister continued saying that Israel is the one indigenous force in the Middle East that prevents the collapse of the Middle East. I had not thought about this much until now. The Prime Minister is actually correct. Israel keeps the lid on so many issues. Without Israel, the Islamic extremism would have taken over. They would have taken over major swaths of the Middle East. And then the world. Former Israeli Minister of Justice, Ayelet Shaked, and her political colleague and party member, Naftali Bennett, had a meeting. It was agreed upon that Shaked would become the head of the party, the new right party, and that they would work to unite the entire right wing. Israel and many religious parties in Israel fall on the right-wing umbrella. Some rabbinic voices have suggested that a woman, certainly a non-religious woman like Shaked, could not lead the religious parties. The problem with that point of view is that Ayelet Shaked is by far the best and most significant force in the right-wing world, and probably the only person capable of bringing the right together. Shaked has national presence. She has experience. She has been successful in maneuvering and navigating around Bibi and his government. She is the best shot they have. The question is, will they give her the chance? I watched the video of the Iranian commando rappelling from the helicopter onto the Stena Imperio, owned by Stena Bulk, a British oil tanker. The 90-second video was spliced together from several different cameras. At least 2, if not 3, of the videos were taken actually by small Iranian boats, the rubber boats and the aluminum boats, surrounded the oil tanker, and one from inside the helicopter of the commandos actually jumping down. It was impressive. The operation took only a few seconds. Iran has stepped up their game. This was the second UK ship that they have taken. And just as Iran is stepping up their game, an Iranian ship that was in the port of Jeddah, which is in Saudi Arabia, was released. The ship, which suffered engine trouble, was being held by the Saudis. After the release, the Iranians publicly thanked the Saudis. It's the long game here that's important. Iran is becoming more and more brazen, but with each move, they push Europe and others closer to U.S. President Donald Trump. They are effectively unifying the world around Trump, a leader they would normally reject. Right now, the game is on. Iran is playing very seriously. The West's countermove may or may not be commensurate with Iran's move. We should know soon. Iran offered a very nice deal to the U.S. It's the two-way street. It's a two-way deal, actually. It goes in both directions. Iranian foreign minister said, and this is important because he said very clearly in the United States, in the United Nations in the United States, that Iran would permanently permit enhanced inspections if, at the same time, the United States will permanently lift all sanctions against Iran. Zarif said the Iranian offer was a good deal. He told reporters that it was, and I'm quoting here, a substantial move. It's not about photo ops. We are interested in substance. If they, meaning the Trump administration, are putting their money where their mouth is, they are going to do it. They don't need a photo op. They don't need a 2-page document with a big signature. End quote. Zarif is calling Trump's bluff. The politician who has been the backbone of Israel's Labor Party for the past 15 years, announced that she is taking time out from politics. Her name is Shelly Yachimovich, and she has been the most successful of all labor politicians for the past 15 years. Not only has Shelly been a backbone of labor, she has also been labor's heart and soul. The April election proved that the fire that once fueled labor has dimmed and is about to be extinguished. The party is a shell of what it once was, and Yachimovich, who was almost single-handedly kept the party alive and relevant, no longer has a burning desire to fight for change the way she once did. Shelly, as she is known, her first name was all she needed, came into politics after a very long and successful career in media. She was the most popular radio talk show host in the country. Shelly effected change through her media platform. Then she left the media and joined the Labor Party in order to better change things in Israel. Shelly's departure is another example of the death of the once great Labor Party. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. Did you know that the word for general in Hebrew is aluf? We've been speaking about generals. There are 5 different ranks in the Israeli army that use the term aluf. Sgan aluf is lieutenant colonel. Aluf mishneh is a full colonel. Tat aluf is a brigadier general. Aluf is a major general. And Rav aluf is lieutenant general. That's the highest. The word aluf actually means champion also, but can also mean teacher too. The national winner of Israel's wrestling tournament is called aluf. The word probably comes from the root elef, which means 1,000. In biblical terminology, the way of saying many was elef. The general commanded many soldiers. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud next week, again on JBS.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.